Hi, welcome to episode 117 of Fresh Air at 5. Fresh Air at 5 is bringing you this week some podcast listen reflections as I, did some learning about AI. I did some learning about disrupting education. And most importantly for me is the SEL learning about, well-being and who I am and joy and happiness and gratitude. So, without further ado, episode 117, Fresh Air 5.
I'm Maurice McDavid, host of Black, Brown, and Bilingue, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood, to take in podcast content, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these selfie videos. You can follow me on Twitter at Fresh Air at 5 or check out my website, briancarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected.
Hey, PLN, Wednesday, April 12th, 2023. Happy Wednesday to you. Today's the first walk of the week for me. Monday was Easter Monday, and I had the day off work, and I took off to go fishing up towards Kamloops and drove 6 hours round trip to go fishing for 5 hours. It was fantastic. Got out in my boat with a friend and enjoyed my time that day. Fantastic. We had some hiccups along the way. Had to replace wheel bearings as we were going on the trailer of the boat, in a town in front of Canadian Tire. So thankful for skills and abilities of those around me. Yes, this morning as I'm walking, I listened to episode 51 of the Tom Schimmer Show as he brings us 3 segments. In the Don't At Me segment, he talks about less is more and how it's important to have strong arguments, but don't dilute them with a whole bunch of weaker arguments for the same thing. Keep the argument strong. In his interview, we talked with Eric Scheninger, the author of Disruptive Thinking, Preparing Students for Their Future. And, the whole disruptive thinking idea is that we are being critical thinkers about the things that we do and how we are taking students along a journey. And, I'm critical of how I do things because I see that I slip into the things that I've done in the past, the way I was taught to do things, and is that good for everybody? So it's about being mindful and aware. So there's a book by Eric that he wrote, and so I would encourage you, if you're curious about this, talks about the difference between behavior and content and how, we undermine behavior because, the mysteries of education say you can't assess behavior. But then what are we doing with competencies? Where do competencies fit in? That's a whole lot of behavior stuff. It's really important. Oh, but we can't put a mark on that, I think. So at the end of the podcast here, Tom brings us a little bit of an overview of his new book. So you should take a listen to that. Look at the show notes. Have a fabulous day and peace. Bye. One more thing for April 12, 2023. As I'm getting close to home now, I listened to Teaching Champions from this week as Brian Martin brings us reflections on a blog post by Livia Chan from the Teach Better team that she put out about 5 ways to cultivate joy in your classroom and in your life. I don't know the exact title, Livia, because I missed that, but you can check out that blog post from the link that Brian has in his podcast show notes. So it was really encouraging to be mindful and think about how do we bring joy and laughter and happiness into our space. I was privileged over Christmas to be able to sit down at dim sum with Livia and Tim Stevenson, Tim Cavey, to talk about life and what's going on. And you know what? Just like Brian Martin says, it's such awesomeness to be having people in your life that are joyful and happy. And you know what? I left just joyous after spending time with Livia, and she has, some fantastic ideas, as we can hear and see. Being intentional about noticing things in your day that bring you joy. That first sip of coffee. I remember Jeff Gargas talking about, that take a moment at the beginning of the day and just sip that coffee, and just helps you recenter, helps you focus. These punctuated things that happen, not necessarily all the punctuated things and scheduled things, but the things that just happen as we go through. Today I'm going to go into our K-2 class, and I am so excited to be able to do that on Wednesdays, and privileged that I have a space that I can walk into, and welcome to, and the little ones are just so excited to see me. I get fist bumps and I get hugs from these kids, and we talk about salmon, and we talk about community members, and we talk about just, doing things together, and it's so fantastic. So thanks for the K-2 teacher, Chantel Fadden, for the work she's doing there. All right, listen to the podcast, take a read of the blog. All right, peace out. Bye-bye. Hey, PL, on April 13, 2023. This morning, I'm finding it hard to get out of bed, but I'm here. I got out, and I'm going for my walk, and it's been good to get some fresh air. So just a reminder to you that, as you get tired, that maybe you need to just keep pushing, and the fresh air and exercise is good for you. So I'm glad I did and didn't give that up this morning. All right, this morning, walking, I listened to episode 191 of My EdTech Life with Fonz, as he has on guest Alex Cotran, who is a part of, and I can't remember if he's the founder, but super integral in AIEDU.org, which is a nonprofit bringing AI awareness to our classrooms and to our education system, and pushing us to think about the future for our students in an AI-laden world and society that we live in. And what's teaching and education doing about that? Are we doing a disservice to our students by not talking about it, by suppressing it? So those are important questions and things to think about. In this discussion that Fonz has with Alex, they bring up the idea that, it's not going to go away. Just like the internet, when it first started, has not gone away. This is not going to go away with AI in our world. And how are we understanding the use of it? How are we making ethical decisions about it? And how are we being able to function in a space that has algorithms and even more than that? My understanding is pretty limited. And, I go, okay, so the algorithm is doing this, but is the algorithm doing it, or is some artificial intelligence doing it? But I guess then you look at it and go, well, the AI is a program written, and it is interpreting information and big data. All right, Alex and Fonz, appreciate the conversation. It's super helpful and distracting too. Peace out. Bye-bye. Hey, PLN, Friday, April 14, 2023. As I'm walking this morning, I got up later, and that's been a trend. But I'm getting out the door. So, even if it's a bit later, I'm still getting out the door, and that's important. Or are you doing that for yourself? Are you putting things off too long that doesn't happen in your day? Don't do that. Get at it. This morning, as I listened to, I think it was episode 52 or 53 of Evolving with Gratitude, Lainey talks with Suzanne Daly, who is a friend of Lainey's and book sister, because Suzanne Daly's book, Teach Happier, just came out, and it's all about Teach Happier for Suzanne Daly, and she talks about 40 days or 40 weeks of practices that can affect your happiness quotient in your life. So I haven't got the book, but Lainey and Suzanne talked about it, and it's a good overview to listen to this episode that they talk. In my thoughts, I'm probably, there's a lot they share about. So one tip that came out of this is, small shifts, big gifts is, a 2% or a 2 degree change. As we look at moving from place to place, taking 180 degrees and making a world of change at one moment is a lot. But if we can, slow it down and make intentional 2 degree changes, we can change the direction of our perspective and our outlook, over time. But it's about consistency rather than intensity. Also, there's a great tip for how to introduce somebody and to shine a light on who these fine people that you are taking time to introduce to each other are and what they do in your life. So that's awesome. Thanks, Suzanne. I appreciate it. And Suzanne has a podcast, Teach Happier. It's a new to me podcast. I'm going to take a listen actually right now and wrap up this week's podcast, Fresh Air at 5, with that reflection. All right, gotta go. Happy Friday, Suzanne and Lainey. Peace, bye. The last thing for April 14, 2023, I have a new to me podcast to bring to you. This morning, as I was listening to Evolving with Gratitude, this past episode with Lainey Rowell, she had on guest Suzanne Daly, and Suzanne Daly has a podcast that she releases on a regular basis. Looks like it's about every week or 2 weeks from what I just looked at the dates, and it's called Teach Happier. And Suzanne, it was a pleasure to put you into my podcast rotation now and hear about you and the work that you're doing and the social emotional help and learning that we are being given by the work that you do. So on the podcast from April 2nd, I listened to this. It was 6 minutes long, so it's not a long listen, but it's important listen. It'll help you through your weeks and days. It was called Reflections on Relational Diversity. And Suzanne brings us some research talking about how diverse are our relationships. Do we go through our days talking with teachers and then just our partner, or do we go through our days talking with, teachers and EAs and students and other colleagues at work that work not in the exact same space as us, and or our parents and friends and relationships and acquaintances at the grocery store. And like I do here, I run into my friend Bruce in the morning on my morning walk sometimes as he's walking with his dog, and I don't know when that's going to happen. But how does your happiness change as you expand your variety of conversations that you have in a day? So fantastic, Suzanne. I appreciate the words and the thoughts. I haven't thought about that before. I'm aware of it, but I never thought about going, okay, this actually is important. So relational diversity, who are all the different people that you engage with as opposed to the same people you engage with on a regular basis. All right, that's all I got. Take a listen to this podcast, put it in your rotation. It's short, bite-sized nuggets of wisdom and thought to provoke you to live a happier life. Peace. Bye.
As my one word for 2021 is appreciate, I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific podcast episodes in the show notes for your learning convenience. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoyed this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can also be found on Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here, and on the Education Podcast Network, podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. I hope you have a fantastic day and get some fresh air before the day is out, and take care of yourself because you're worth it.